Hello, Adam from RAILstuff here with the long-awaited second part of the shed. So a little while ago I started building one of these, which is from Bunter's Yard. Lovely little 3D printed wood filament style shed, garden shed. These are actually available at RAILstuff.com now, thanks to Bunter's Yard for becoming a supplier, which is great to see. But this is pretty much as far as I got last time. I built the shed and I drew out a plan, and now I need to develop this a bit further. Some great ideas came in, mainly via Instagram I think, and some in the comments as well, so thank you for that, I really appreciate it. And in general I think people were okay with the kind of layout that I'd suggested. But I was talking about, do I add some relief to it? I thought it would look a little bit odd having the rails up high and everything else down low. So the final decision was that actually what's going to happen is the rails are going to be in a small cutting. So we're actually going to raise the relief here and at the back as well, and just make a nice little diorama like that. If you remember rightly, shed here, with I think we were going to turn it into some kind of planted area or something like that here. So it's almost like a small allotment area, like a gravel path up to the shed, and then there was going to be a rather gaudy looking security fence there, one of the Nightwing fences, PM121, RAILstuff.com of course, and then there was going to be a rail track along there and maybe some tree and foliage stuff on the relief in the corner. That's the general idea. So first thing I needed was some track. Believe it or not, I didn't have any because I don't have a layout. Actually the only track I've got is glued down on little diorama boards. But I've been looking around at shows that I've been to recently and picked up this little bundle. I say little bundle, it's quite some length, and there's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Some of it quite weathered, some of it not. Just looking to see if there's any markings on here. Yeah, it's Pico Streamline track. Doesn't have any more information on there than that, but obviously it's with the concrete style sleepers. It's got some flex to it as well. It's dirty, so it's not stuff that you would put down on a layout, but for a diorama it's perfect. And it was £5 for all of that from my friends at Junction Box at the Preston Model Railway show that I've been at this weekend. So that comes in a bit, but first of all, building up the relief, I've found some foam stuff, sort of. So I'm going to have a dig around with this foam, build up some relief, and then you know what's coming after that. It's going to be plaster cloth. I think I better time lapse this bit because I'm going to be cutting and sticking and all sorts for quite some time. So this is where we're up to. Some big blocks of foam cut out in general shape and put on. Now for anyone who watched that and thought, oh, that glue's not going to stick it, yeah, you'd be right. It's not, but it's there really just to tack it down in place, because obviously when we do the plaster cloth over the top, that's going to create the permanent bond, really permanent bond. So I don't have to worry too much about that. I just needed to tack it in place so that I can get back with the Stanley knife and sort of trim it down to shape. So that's the next step, because at the moment you may notice it's all a bit square and unrealistic. The track is going to drop down in here. In fact, I'm going to take a piece of this track off the bundle so that I can just wing it through. Obviously this is going to need a heck of a lot of trimming down as well. You know, so we'll trim it down and put it in place before too long as well. And I have to say, if you are sort of just starting your journey on scenics, or enjoy scenics like I do, want to do a bit more on scenics, but don't necessarily feel confident enough to do it on your layout yet, then dioramas are a great way of learning. They really are. Yeah, so they're a really great way of sort of easing yourself into scenics, learning, creating scenes, creating a bit of a story of their own anyway. It's a really good way of doing it. So this, you know, the track's going to sort of run through here in some way, shape or form, and obviously we'll end up ballasting it down and everything like that. But essentially I now need to create the cutting down towards the track, left enough either side of the track, you know, for the ballasting, maybe a little bit of trackside detail as well. The fence is sort of going to end up along the top edge of the cutting, probably just on this side, because like I say, I want to put a tree or something over there. I know I built a tree last year and actually I was quite pleased with it. I can't work out for the life of me what I've done with it, so I'm going to have to find that tree, or else we may be doing another video on building trees at some point. Yeah, right, so time-lapse time again, because I'm going to get knifey. Right, it's not perfect, but it is better. You can see, yeah, much more rounded edges. I mean, a lot of the relief can be perfected in the plaster cloth. If you're interested, by the way, with the plaster cloth, I will cover the entire area, including the lower level here, because whilst of course I want it flat for the track, I want it realistic as well. So, yeah, there is going to be a small amount of relief that is created by the plaster cloth, but I will keep smoothing down the plaster cloth to get it as flat as possible. But yeah, I've just sort of rounded it off, as you can hopefully see on the camera there, just to slope it off. It's quite a steep cutting, but it's only a shallow one, so I'm sure it's not as prototypical as it could be, but really I'm just creating a fun little diorama. Many people also say this is not the ideal foam to use to build it up, and you'd be absolutely right. You know, and ideally you'd want a bit of wall insulation, like some Kingspan or whatever you call it. But I don't have any of that, and I did have some of this lying around, so I was going to use it. I'm a big fan of using things that you have lying around where you can. So, yeah, so I thought I would use that up. It was literally going to go in the recycling, so why not? Now I need to find some plaster cloth, because I'm hoping I've got some in my personal stash, because the shop is completely out of stock of plaster cloth again. So I'm going to need to order some more of that again. Yeah, hopefully I've got some in my personal stash. Let's go find out. Right, I found some plaster cloth, so we're ready to crack on with that. I have got a bit more on this. I've got fresh roll as well, so I knew I had some in the personal collection. But if you've not done plaster clothing before, It is really simple. I'm not going to go through it in too much detail on this video, but I am going to link in the description below to a video where I do a full tutorial on using plaster cloth. But it's really simple. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sit here and cut into strips, and then once I've cut a load of strips, I'll start dipping them one by one in the water. Ideally you'd use lukewarm water. I've got cold water because I couldn't be bothered to go into the house, to be frank, because it's raining outside. So the cold water works just as well. It just takes a little bit more smoothing down because it doesn't dissolve the plaster quite as well. But just cut it in strips that will fit into your pot. Soak them in the water for a couple of seconds each strip, and then lay them on and start to build them up, and before too long they will start to go off, and you can smooth them down with a paintbrush and all that kind of stuff. But like I say, link to other video in description if you want to see that in a little bit more detail. And of course, whilst I'm just cutting these up, good time for me to remind you to, if you wouldn't mind just liking the video, hitting the subscribe button if you haven't done already, and all that good YouTubey kind of stuff, because the more of this I do, the better. And also just a note, it's worth just putting some scrap cardboard or something like that down wherever you're doing this, because you will drip bits of plaster around, and you know, you don't want to end up with setting plaster all over the place. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do some plastering, so time lapse again. So there we go, all covered in plaster. Learning for you is, in the introduction I said you can use colder water, it will just take a little while longer to smooth out. Yeah, it's fine in the summer. This is the winter. Well, it's not supposed to be, it's March, but we've got snow coming this week, so it's still winter. And yeah, the cold water was not great. But as I said also in the intro, I couldn't be bothered to go inside because it's raining and it's cold, which is why I hadn't got the lukewarm water that you should have. But then I remembered there's a coffee machine literally just up here. You can't see my finger, where is it? Just up here. So I thought, hang on a minute, if I just don't put a pod in the machine and turn it on, maybe I'll get hot water. And I did. So I managed to put some hot water in my little tub, and it was so much easier to work with after that. I'm not going to pick it up and move it because obviously it's still pretty wet at the minute, but some of this you know, you can feel it going hard already. It's still wet to the touch, but you know, it's solidifying, shall we just say. So that is so fast at working this stuff, even faster in the summer when there's some warmth, but it will go off pretty quickly, and eventually the shed will end up around there, with some, I still haven't quite worked out whether it's allotment-y or something up there. And then the security fence will run along top here. We're going to use a lot of static grass. I've got some textured mud paint as well, which I've shown you before. It's the MIG ammo stuff. So we're going to be using that to create some mud and things like that. Obviously the shed itself is going to be painted and weathered at some point as well. We are also going to use this as a project for trying out the airbrush for the first time, especially for detail around the track. Now, I've never done it before, so there certainly won't be any kind of tutorial videos there, but I am going to use the Railway Fast method paint set. Ooh, some ballast almost falls on me. Some Railway Fast method paint set to try and weather in the track and surrounding area as well. Yeah, so that's kind of the general feeling, and then yeah, some kind of foliage in this top corner. It may be that I even put a little back scene on it or something like that, but I'm not sure, because obviously the track comes off here, so it might get a bit scrappy if I did that. So I mean, obviously I could do it across the back here. I don't know. Maybe I'll just leave it as a simple diorama. But that's kind of where we're at with the shed part 2. So part 3 hopefully will come a little bit quicker than part 2 did, but in part 3 we will lay the track, paint the base, and then probably start to map out where everything goes, and we'll start to think about the next step from there. Maybe fixing the shed down in place, which means that probably needs painting and weathering. So I think part 3 will be laying the track, painting the base, and painting and weathering the shed. But feel free to tune in for that one. Like I say, don't forget to like and subscribe and all that kind of stuff. You know, look, even if you never watch one of my videos ever again, if you could hit the subscribe button, that'd be really useful. You know, we're reaching some small milestones, but it would be great to do more. I love making content like this and playing around with modelling stuff. And obviously, you know, for me as a small business, it is good promotional stuff for us as well. And I really appreciate all the people that have come up to me at shows just recently and have watched my videos, have listened to the podcast, all that kind of stuff. It's yeah, it's really humbling to get your feedback and to know that people are watching, listening and enjoying. I do really appreciate that. And I will be recording the next episode of the podcast this week as well. So it is coming back. Yeah, this year has been a bit slow to get started, what with having the little one and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, we're ready to rock and roll. We've done 2 shows this year now, both with Scotland, which was just a record-breaking success for us. And then Preston at the weekend, which, you know, for a more local show was a rip-roaring success for us. So great, really good start to the year, and you know, I just once again wanted to say thank you to everyone who supports RAILstuff, either by shopping with us or just by saying nice stuff to us. Really appreciate it. Next show, by the way, Alexandra Palace. Hope to see you there. In the meantime, though, this has been The Shed Part 2, and we'll see you for Part 3.